So we're going to record the session. So let me kick it off, and then I'll be letting people in while I'm chatting. I'm going to hand over to Classy and Sam in a minute, but welcome to everybody. It's fantastic to see everyone. We've got folks in from a lot from South Africa, from Joburg, Cape Town, and Piketberg, but we've also got from Canada and India and Rome and a variety of other places. So really cool to see everybody. Special welcome to Classy and Sam. Thanks for taking your time to talk to us today about logotherapy. I'll introduce you in a minute. But just to tell you, I think we've got a range of people and interests on the call. We've got a lot of coaches, we've got aspiring coaches, we've got folks who work in training and wellness, and then we've just got some people interested in the topic and about how I suppose we might apply meaning and purpose to lead healthier and happier lives. Just for some background, I think I put it in the WhatsApp or in my email. I've known Classy for many years. I think I'm going to age us, Classy, but I'm going to say about 3 decades. We worked in the corporate sector together. Classy was running a big advertising agency, and I was in TV broadcasting or TV advertising. Classy left advertising in 2008 to start Street School, which is focused on coaching, leadership, and personal growth programs. And in one of the things Classy does is take people on guided spiritual journeys, either to Base Camp Everest or to Dharamsala in India. And I was fortunate in 2016 to travel with Classy to Dharamsala, and so we attended an event hosted by the Dalai Lama, which was super, super special. So if you're interested in doing that, you can reach out to Classy, or maybe you're more adventurous than I am and you want to go to Base Camp Everest, you could do that too. A few months ago, I was listening to Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, and I was struck by his harrowing descriptions of his treatment at the hand of the Nazis, and fascinated by his inner strength in the face of extreme diversity. But also that he managed to shape that brutal and awful experience into something meaningful, and perhaps of great learning and importance to all of us. So Classy was the ideal person to reach out to. I knew he was involved in logotherapy, and I wanted to find out more about it and kind of walk around inside his brain. And I thought there may be some other people interested in doing that as well. So Classy was the former chair of the Viktor Frankl Institute of Logotherapy in South Africa. He lectured on logotherapy at UNISA's Center of Applied Psychology. He works closely with Sam Sparks. Sam is on the call with us as well. Sam is a senior change management specialist at Sasol, working in the HR department. She's been working with Classy since 2017. She's got a master's in industrial psychology and completed her logotherapy qualification at UNISA in 2017. And she's passionate about finding and living one's purpose and meaning. She's lucky enough to be based in Knysna, but travels to Cape Town and Joburg regularly. And Classy is based, I think, Classy in Cape Town or Stellenbosch, and so Classy also travels to Joburg regularly. And Classy, I think if I can hand it over to you, we're going to have a presentation, and Sam and Classy are going to talk about logotherapy, and following the presentation we can have a quick break and then maybe get into some Q&A and discussion, which I think is going to be really interesting, Classy, in terms of the application of logotherapy and how it might be used in our lives. So can I hand it over to you?
Good. Okay, Chris, great. Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for making this happen, and welcome everybody. On behalf of Sam and myself. Maybe I must just say a couple of things first. Like, for instance, I'm not a psychologist. Both Sam and I studied logotherapy at UNISA, and I ended up teaching it at the Center of Applied Psychology. But I'm more trained in the business sort of sense, formally academically. But I've studied and worked with this material, it feels 24/7 since about 2010, when I started the studies at UNISA and the journeys to India. And so when I say I'm a practical person, I love the philosophy of logotherapy, but if it doesn't translate into day-to-day, if it doesn't make sense, there's some things I can't get my head around. It's too complicated for me. So part of the reason why logotherapy is so, I resonate so strongly with it, it just makes sense. So just as a start, In terms of our, so maybe let me share a PowerPoint just to get something on the screen. So Sam, is it sharing?
It is.
Okay. So Sam and I started working together. I mean, we've worked together for 5-6 years now. We met at UNISA, and we practice logotherapy in the sense we offer courses, one-day programs, we coach it. The flagship at the moment is mindfulness leadership programs that we run for Toyota. So we run this as a 6-month program consisting of group sessions and overnight workshop and one-on-one sessions and so forth. So we apply it every day. And we thought what we'll do is talk you through this. So just understand that this is offered as it's a 4-part or a 3-year postgraduate diploma to get to the level of teaching logotherapy. And we're going to give you a 1-hour flyover, so we're going to miss a lot of things. And what we want to do is just touch on the highlights. It's a little bit like explaining how do you get a man on the moon, and you want to, where do you start? So we're going to start somewhere. So we're going to, and then we're going to get to the coaching part specifically, because although it's called logotherapy, and the beauty of this thing, it is a philosophy. Basically, it's the thinking, Frankl's philosophy. How does he look at life? How do you navigate? And how do you treat it as a therapy? So how do you help people? And we're going to get to that a little bit towards the end, obviously, because most of you are, or many of you are in the coaching and mental health profession. So just as a start, there's 2 questions that Frankl grew up, as a young 6-year-old boy. He once asked a teacher, what are we? Are we just carbon? Are we just bones and mass and body? What is it to be human? So from a really young age, he had this question, what is it to be human? What makes us truly human? What is this special quality that we have as humans? And secondly, how do we navigate? How do we keep our psychic balance? How do we stay upright mentally and, inside? So this philosophy of Frankl, why I personally resonate with this is he didn't go into the woods and came up with some idea a week later and then launched it, like some, he pulled from really early on. So you will recognize Socrates in his philosophy, the Greeks, Plato. You'll, if you're into Stoicism, you'll recognize some of those philosophical concepts. Kierkegaard, which is regarded as the first existential philosopher, or you'll recognize him in Frankl's work. So he wasn't shy of digging into the past and coming up with a blueprint for how to live optimally. Secondly, he robustly interacted with the thinkers of the time in this space, Freud and Adler in Vienna, in Austria and Germany in particular. I mean, he started corresponding with Freud when he was still at school, having debates with him as a schoolboy, and then importantly, his personal experiences. When he went to the camps, he was about 37 years old, and Sam is going to give us an insight into Frankl, the man behind the philosophy. So 37 years old, he had a doctorate, he was working at a big hospital with thousands of suicide and depressed clients. They gave him his own ward. So he was working this stuff. And so he was working with the material. And then finally, he tested, this was almost like a test in the camps. When he went to the camps, he had his first book written. So the camps for him was almost the litmus, the acid test, the litmus test for this philosophy. So those things, for me, what I'm doing by telling you this is to say that this is not an intellectual exercise. Frankl lived this stuff and he saw it in the camps, and he himself was feeling depressed and thought about checking out and so forth. So in a nutshell, and Sam, I'm going to hand over to you just now. So if somebody asks me what is logotherapy, so it is in essence a way of thinking to make you aware of your spiritual realities, your bigger realities. Frankl would say that classic psychotherapy hopes to bring to awareness our hidden drives and hidden, things that lurks in the darkness and the subconscious and the unconscious. Where logotherapy is a height psychology. It makes us aware of our spiritual reality. So it doesn't really look back all that much. It does, but it's not big on that. It's not very intrusive. It does, but not that much. It's more a case of where are you going despite your circumstances? And it's a big call for responsibility. I mean, he was very big on responsibility. He refers to it as the demand quality of life. We are every day confronted with in some way or form by life, and we need to deal with it. It's like, it's so just to split it just for the moment from positive psychology, it is not denying the negative, the dark, the not so nice. It absolutely embraces it. Positive thinking. This is not positive thinking. It's not realistic. We cannot live with positive thinking, and it's like trying to run on one leg. Anyway, so enough from me for the moment, just as an intro. Sam, so maybe just give us an insight in Frankl, the man, because obviously it's his thinking.
Well, he's an amazing, inspirational character. And as Klaasje said, he was something of a child prodigy when it came to psychology and to philosophy. So by the time he was 15 years old, he was giving lectures on psychology. He was corresponding with Freud. He became part of the Adlerian Society in Austria. And he always had this absolute passion with understanding meaning and how to live your life meaningfully. And he always used what he learned in a practical sense. So as Klaasje said, when he, after he left school and he went to university, he started studying medicine. But at the same time, he also opened up a clinic to give therapy for free for school children who were feeling suicidal. So the Austrian education system at the time was incredibly demanding, and kids felt like they do now that if they failed, they would life would not be worth living. So there was this massive spate of suicides around about the end of the year when they were writing their exams. And he and his volunteers managed to bring down the suicide rates remarkably. And this is for, someone who's 21, 22. So he continued with his medical studies, and he continued refining his theory, though he never got a book published until after he went to the concentration camp. And, the concentration camp obviously was the defining moment in his life, but even the build up to going to the concentration camp fills, part of his story. So he had started working at the Vienna Neurological Polytech, and he started to refine his theories. He started to write his book, The Doctor and the Soul. His life really started to happen in his mid-30s. So he got married to his first wife, Tilly, who was a nurse. And things were starting to get really, really terrible in Austria. And Tilly found herself pregnant. They were just newly married. And just before they were shipped off to the concentration camps, she was forced to have an abortion. And it was the most terrible, terrible time, because he realized that in order for her to survive, she would need to do whatever it takes to survive. So he said to her, listen, you do what you must. We need to get through this together. They went They were in concentration camps, split up. He didn't see his wife for the duration of being in the concentration camps. He lost his father, he lost his mother, he lost his wife. He went to 3 different concentration camps in his late 30s. The experiences of being in the concentration camps are in Man's Search for Meaning, which is the most superb book. Chris, I'm glad you read it. It's a short book. The beginning part of it tells of his terrible trials and tribulations, but also the fantastic insights he had into what motivates a human being. And after the concentration camp, he was around about 41 years of age. It was almost like he was absolutely driven to share what he'd learned in the concentration camp. And between the ages of sort of 41 and 94, when he died, he wrote 39 books. He gave lectures in about 250 universities, and he sparked the whole logotherapy. So really it comes down to his life and his life experiences. Yes, it was taken up and taken onward by others of his students, but I think you can agree he was rather a remarkable man. So Classy, I'm not going to go into his whole life experiences in the concentration camps because we'll be here for an hour.
Oh, no,
and
good.
I will be in tears.
Yeah.
So let's not go that.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Thanks, Sam. Just to add to what you said in terms of, you know, with that, when Tilly had to get an abortion, one of his books is called The Unheard Cry for Meaning, and it was dedicated to that unborn child. I haven't used Zoom. Can I just, Chris, I just want to check something.
Yeah, just go to the next slide.
No, yeah, I want to see if I can see the slides. No, but I want to see if I can see the slides coming up, but there's not a way of setting that. Okay, no problem. All right, so
we can see the slides fine. Claudia, can you not see your slides?
Okay, no, I can see them. I was hoping to see the one coming up. Okay, let's just roll with it. So, okay, we're going to get into his thinking now, and I thought of just sharing 2 quotes to give an idea of how he thought about us as people, as humans. So sorry, so his English is very old. So this, when I looked at this, everything has its value, but man has his dignity. I thought this is maybe not PC in today's day and age, but we're a close community here, so you understand it was in the proverbial sense. I think part of the reason why logotherapy is not a mass movement like positive psychology, for instance, and Martin Seligman did wonderful work with that, you know, in the last 25, 30 years, is Frankl insisted to write for scientists. And there was no sort of commercial driving force behind it. You know, no university took it up and made it a central piece. So some of his books are really difficult to read. It's translated from German. It's heavy to consume. It's some of the stuff is difficult to consume, although the principles is sometimes easy to understand. So just as a, just as an aside. So with these 2 quotes, so everything has its value, but man has his dignity. So Frankl, for him, his approach in the medical term or in the psychological space was to rehumanize psychotherapy. And in the workplace, when Sam and I do this at work, we are rehumanizing people in a way, because we run the risk of becoming a cog in a machine. You know, we're just a number. It's just you need to deliver. You know, you just to jump through hoops, and we lose dignity. And you know, sometimes when we talk about meaning and purpose, and if I cannot look around the room, but I'm going to make a wild assumption that we all have TVs and fridges and electricity and probably 2 cars or 3 cars and swimming pools and stuff like that. So we are at the top end of human society in terms of economic value. But we run the risk of confusing wealth and assets and stuff like that with dignity. And the fact that somebody sweeps the streets, it's most probably because it's the only job that person can find, but that does not mean that person doesn't have any dignity. And Frankl was trying to, he's reminding us of that dignity has got nothing to do with the work that you have. It's got everything to do with the way you apply yourself and the way you interact in society. The second one, an airplane parked on the ground does not cease to be a plane. The fact that he would say we mustn't treat man as he is, we must treat him as he ought to be. And he's pointing here at our potential that we have, but often we get sucked into situations and we actually find ourselves parked on the ground. We're not flying. That doesn't mean we're not a plane. We are a plane, but we maybe just in the wrong space. Okay, so we're going to now unpack with you probably the 7 or 10 or so key principles on which his philosophy is based. And the first one is the meaning of life. So what is this thing? And books have been written, people do PhDs on just exploring what is the meaning of life. And Frankl will say to us that we need to look at it through maybe in 3 dimensions. He would refer to it as there's a thing called the ultimate meaning of life. And the ultimate meaning of life is the space of the divine. It's the space of maybe, personal religious beliefs, and there's stuff there that we will never know. And forgive me if I don't want to be flippant here, but we're just chatting really. So he will say to us he was a deeply religious person, but his work is presented as secular. So whether you're religious or not doesn't matter. And personally, I travel a lot to the East, and those folks will say to you, whatever makes you a good person, that's, if you're religious, whatever makes you a good person, that's the right religion for you. And some people will say that kindness is my religion, or love is my religion, or compassion is my religion. They don't necessarily belong to a sect or a religious, grouping. So in terms of meaning, the ultimate meaning is left. There's nothing much we can do with it. We can embrace it, we can work with it, but that's a deeply personal thing. And in a therapy situation, your religious beliefs are embraced. And as a therapist, whatever you're thinking, you need to be cognizant of that, and you need to embrace that. And I'm hinting here to Frankl embracing the fullness of a human being, and not only the emotions. And we're going to get to the somatic, or to the dimensional ontology, the way we made up body, mind, and spirit. We don't exclude, Frankl doesn't exclude anything when he looks at the human being. The 2 meaning of life domains, if I can call it that, or aspects that we mostly, that we can actually engage with, is the meaning of my life and the meaning of the moment. And they are different, and they're both significant. And Frankl uses the example of a movie. Like any good movie, you will not know the meaning of that movie or the impact of that movie until the very end. But every scene, every moment, every day, sitting here at 6:25 on 18th of October is potentially my and Sam's meaning of the moment to share with you some thinking on Frankl. So in the moment. So, I mean, we're going to touch on mindfulness as well, and just thinking of the meaning of life and the meaning in life already creates an awareness that I need to look here, because it doesn't exist tomorrow. It only exists here. Frankl refers to it as the transitoriness of life, how we look at life, future, present, and past, that the future is only but a potentiality. It is nothing but a potentiality. And the past is the past, and he shows us how to learn from the past, but there's nothing much you can really do about that. The only way you can deal with life is now in the moment. So meaning of life is to be considered in those 3 aspects: ultimate meaning, the meaning of my life, and the meaning of the moment in which I find myself. Sam, anything before I move
No, I
on?
think when I started studying logotherapy, I was hoping they would say, the meaning of life is, I don't know, 169, and then I would be enlightened and all would be good. I think what I did learn is that you create a meaningful life with every single moment. So in every moment, you've got a choice, and you choose to do a certain thing and you behave in a certain way. And your meaningful life is made up of each one of those moments strung together. So what I didn't understand, because I thought that you had to, sit in a cave and meditate, and, after 30 years, you'd find out the meaning of your life. Whereas it's a very practical, making the right choice in every single moment, and those moments strung together make a meaningful life. It's just so much easier to understand.
Yeah. I saw something today where he referred to us as similar to a builder. We have some tools and we put together, we create, we cobble, we stitch a life together moment by moment. So, and meaning is, as a therapist, is not, or a coach, or, as in applying this philosophy, meaning is not something that can be prescribed at all. At best, it can be described to a client or to a, when it comes to coaching, Frankl was one asked, well, what is the difference between logotherapy and psychotherapy? And the conversation roughly went like, well, in psychotherapy, the client, he also, he was in conversation with a psychotherapist, and he said, well, what is psychotherapy? And the psychotherapist said something like, well, the client has to lie down and talk about things that he finds very uncomfortable to talk about. And Frankl on the spot said, well, in logotherapy, the client remains upright and he has to hear things that is maybe difficult to hear. So logotherapy in a way is very direct, and there's no, it is, so it's not, let me stop there. The second principle is will to meaning. So stacking up, Frankl would say that we have a will to be meaningful, to experience meaning, to be of meaning, to have significance, that our desire for meaning is stronger than our search for power or pleasure. So Freud with the pleasure principle, and Adler with the power principle in individual psychology, just to show you the difference, that we want pleasure and there's nothing wrong with pleasure. But pleasure is maybe a result of something, and power is maybe a means to meaning. So money, for instance, is in it. Obviously, money is, we all want. Who doesn't want money? But money in itself is pretty useless. It is what you do with it. So if you look at it in that way, so the will to meaning is, for Frankl, what he's telling us is that is our strongest driver, is to experience meaning. Power and pleasure, you're going to run out of rubber. You're going to run out of road. It's going to lead to, it doesn't last. As we talk about this, try, think for yourself. You are an experiment. You are the only experiment. So we don't have to reach too far to test the validity of this kind of stuff. You listen to it and the extent to which it makes sense. So will to meaning is the second principle. Sam.
Yeah, will to meaning is also something that the therapist would evoke for healing. And I imagine that's something that one could use as a coach as well. Is it's there, it's powerful. So part of the coaching journey is to discover what gives that person meaning, because that gives fuel to be able to bring that person forward in healing, or to come up with a new direction.
Okay. The third, there are three main tenets in logotherapy: the meaning of life, that context, the will to meaning, and then what is called the freedom of will. So what he says to us is that we have the freedom. Now Kierkegaard, Danish philosopher, referred to this. He said, anxiety is the price of freedom. It's like a kid in a candy shop. We either don't know what to choose, we've got too many options, or we're so stuck that we can't see the options. But the freedom of will, what is important here is that it is Sam, you're going to lead us through the dimensional section just after that. You must do that one. You do that better than me. But this freedom of will is, it's like a voice that comes from the inside. It's like Frankl uses his, to give you an idea of the language that he uses. So he would say we have a pre-reflective ontological self-understanding. So, I mean, the first time I heard pre-reflective ontological self-understanding, I thought, what the hell is that? How do I make sense of that? It's the wisdom of the heart. And this wisdom of the heart is this voice of this is a thing of freedom that directs us. And if we do not listen to this freedom of the will, if we do not express this freedom of the will, aggression, depression, addiction are typically things that we will notice, because there is something inside there is something inside this person that is not being expressed. So that wasn't this side. So
Yeah, Tanushree, could you mute yourself, please?
Sorry, I've just muted. Them, sorry.
So, Sam, take us through the dimensions, because this is a
I will do. I'll talk about the existential vacuum and meaninglessness as well.
Yeah. Okay.
What makes logotherapy stand out is it's the only psychology which takes into account spirituality. Not only does it account for spirituality, but it requires that the therapist makes use of a person's spirit in order to bring the healing about. So a lot of what you would do in logotherapy, whether it's a counseling session or a therapy session, is to find the neurological hints that you get. And neurological is the word that he uses to describe spirituality, because spirituality is often confused with religion. So he refers to the spirit as nous, N-O-O-S. And it is a lot about getting in touch with it. So when you're talking to someone, for example, in a coaching session, and you see their eyes light up, that is then the voice of the spirit. That is meaning coming to the fore. And those are logo hints, which enables the therapist or the coach to work with that very strong content which is arising in order to lead that person to healing, or to support that person in wherever it is that they want to go. He also spoke about there being an absence of meaning, and an absence of meaning is something that we all understand. So it is almost worse than depression. It is a complete hopelessness, which he refers to as the existential vacuum. It is that sense of emptiness that one has inside, where there feels like there's absolutely no purpose in going forward. And it is such a powerful state of being that when he would see people are going through the existential vacuum in the concentration camps, he knew that he had to work really, really quickly, because someone in that state of mind is very prone to just dying. So, people in concentration camps, for example, would say by Christmas time, the Allies are going to liberate us here in the concentration camp. And they would firmly believe that. They would say they'd had a dream or something like that. When that time came, when Christmas came and they were still not liberated, they could actually just lose hope to the extent that they would actually just lie down and die, even without any other physical causes. And this is something that Viktor Frankl would obviously had been dealing with when he was dealing with the suicidal adolescents. And it became something that he explored more and more. And obviously the existential vacuum is with us today. It is in modern society, and it is something that logotherapists are trained to deal with. And classy, I think that links to the defined power of the human spirit.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to go back to the dimensions. So Frankl will say to us that we need to consider a human in terms of 3 dimensions: body, mind, and spirit. And he somatic, psychic, and the noetic in his formal language. And he would suggest that they all related, they're all important, but we are spiritual beings, he would say, but the expression comes through the body, obviously. So in terms of just how, I just want to stress the point how powerful the spiritual domain is. He would say that in the body we are limited. We need food, we need water, otherwise, the body will die. The body is really dependent. In the body, we need balance, we need homeostasis, we need an equilibrium. In the mind, typically, but he would very powerfully remind us that emotions and feelings are things that we experience. It is not who we are. And I'm now sort of putting a foot into the Eastern thinking that the space between what I'm sensing, I cannot deny the fact that I'm angry. I cannot deny the fact that I'm feeling frustrated. I cannot deny the fact that I'm feeling hungry, but I have the power and I have the ability to regulate and handle it in a particular way. Now, and the spiritual domain is for him the medicine chest of meaning. This is where this is the organ. He would refer to it as an organ that can sniff out meaning. And this organ, our spiritual domain is not built for homeostasis. It is not built for balance. It is not built for equilibrium. So the tension inside us is a spiritual tension. That spiritual, and I'm sort of just linking back to what Sam said, that the point here is that if we feel a frustration, it is not necessarily a bad thing. We live in a world where we want to click the channel the whole time. From Monday, we quickly want to get it done and click to a happy place, where he would say to us that this tension is a hint, it's a voice that's reminding us of something. And this is it's almost a guidepost to discover meaning for ourselves. The defiance of the human spirit, and here, here he would use Nietzsche, the quote from and Nietzsche wasn't even the first why guy. I think Socrates must have been the why guy before him, and maybe there was somebody before Socrates, we just know about him. That if you have a strong enough why, you'll walk through a brick wall, you'll crawl over broken glass. So knowing why we do what we do. So in each of us, we have a defiancy to take a stand on top of our suffering, because it's the right thing to do, given whichever pillar of meaning is the one that we're embracing at that time. So he would go as far as saying that we are able to transcend and get over our biological, psychological, sociological conditioning for what we believe in, what we think is right. So you can see that he is not he's not trying to give us a quick fix. There's no quick fix around. It is unashamedly standing on top of your stuff and take a stand and fly your flag, because and the why is now, it's unique for each person, but typically those are families, it may be work, it may be your own reputation, it may be whatever the why is that is there, it can unlock a defined attitude that is empowering. Okay, now we're gonna the last point on this slide, avenues to meaning. So all good and well, you might think this sounds all cool, but now where do I find this meaning? Where must I go and look? And he would say to us 3 broad areas you can go and investigate. Sam and I'm just going to quickly pack them out, and then maybe you can elaborate on them. The first one is what you do. It is how you interact and connect with life. He calls it your creative act. The second one is what you experience and what you get. And the third one is your attitudes. It's the attitude you adopt. So logotherapy is not very big on trying to regulate behavior. Behavior will sort itself out if attitude is sorted, and if there's a high regard for the underlying attitudes. Sam, maybe do you want to just unpack the 3 avenues a bit more?
So really it's 2 ways you interact with the world. So the creative values are what you bring to the world, what you bring into the world. So it's your creative act. So it's the work that you do. It can be things like art, it can be music, it can be poetry. It's the way you make the world a better place. And what he says is, not only must we look for the right thing to do in every situation, so you've got your choices, but you should also seek out meaning. So you shouldn't just go through your life sort of in a passive way and make your decisions. You should really try and build a life of meaning by seeking out meaning. So as I said, the first way is what you give to the world. Then the experiential values are the things that you take from the world. And that's, a lot of us don't want to do that. Taking sounds like a bad thing, but it is just as important as giving. So experiential values are, in Viktor Frankl's case, his mountain climbing. It was so important to him, this mountain climbing, that he had a mountain climbing club in the concentration camp, where they would get together and talk about the peaks that they had climbed and their experiences, and talk about the amazing vistas that they experienced. And it was something which for a moment just elevated their spirits and put them in touch with what's important to them. Of course, the most important experiential value is love. And it was something that he wrote extensively about. And in Man's Search for Meaning, you'll find out that even though he wasn't with Tilly, his wife, he still found that her love had such a huge influence on his life and helped to guide what he was doing, even though she wasn't physically there. And it was almost like love doesn't need to be linked to a person and to the reality that we find ourselves in. Love is a spiritual quality. But I think where he differs from a lot of psychologists and philosophers that I've read is around the attitudinal values. And, what he says is, if you have no more choices in the world left to you, so in a concentration camp, they take absolutely everything from you, but the one thing that they cannot take from you is your attitude. And, he adopted a defiant attitude in the concentration camp, where he wrung out as much meaning as he possibly could from where he was at. He treated it as a living laboratory. He assisted everyone from both a medical doctor perspective and from a psychiatrist perspective to give people hope and to help people to survive. And a lot of his 39 books is also about case studies of people who have adopted a very strong attitude in the face of the most terrible suffering. So he's not saying that we should look for suffering because it's going to make us a better person. But if we are confronted with suffering that we can't escape, he suggests that we adopt an attitude towards it so that we could be seen almost as a role model of how a person can face up to such terrible odds. And again, he would talk about people who had risen above these circumstances. And in one case, he wrote about a student of logotherapy who was paralyzed from the neck down, and how he said that my accident broke my neck, but it didn't break me. And in fact, he became the most incredible logotherapist and Viktor Frankl invited him to give talks on stage when he did lectures. So attitude is probably the most important source of meaning that one can get. Would you agree, Klausie?
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. And I think the next slide is let me just see if it is the next one. Yeah. So this is not a therapy that is pessimistic. It is not. Yeah, let me just say that. Frankl would say, if there's suffering, get rid of it, remove it. You know, why would you want to suffer if you can do something about it? But if you cannot, then despair is suffering without meaning. That is meaningless struggle, meaningless suffering. But so he would remind us that by linking meaning to our suffering, we are able to get ourselves in a space where we can shoulder it. So you can see that we're not talking about happiness here. And the difference between happiness and meaning is maybe for another conversation. And of course, we want to be happy, but life is not always happy, you know. So when I have to pick up my kids at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night from a party, I'm not happy, for goodness sake. There's nothing happy about it, but I have to do it, and it's meaningful for me, and you know, I get on with it. So I just want to just on the avenues to meaning. So in the workplace, for instance, your creative acts would be the report that you write, the presentation that you do, the assistance that you give. So creative acts are not only creative in the sense of painting and poetry and music. It is what you do and at the workplace, and the way you, and I mean, you can hopefully see it for yourself. And you know, the thing about that is I want to just, I'm in a conversation with somebody. I was in a conversation with somebody today, and something came up, and the person asked me, so why are we doing this? And I said to him, because it's the right thing to do. I mean, it's, you know, I don't necessarily like it, and I don't know if I agree with it, but it's the right thing to do, you know. So, and you can see I'm struggling to get my word. I don't want to give you the detail, but I'm struggling to find my words, because sometimes these things are in the moment, and only you will know if it's right or wrong. This is not prescriptive kind of stuff. Okay, we've done that. So moving on. So now we're moving on a little bit to, so how do I apply? So we're now getting into application. So we're like very quickly gone through, and there's so much more to say about what we've covered, but it will give you at least a sort of a hint of the narrative for this. Chris, by the way, I mean, the slides, if it makes any sense to anybody, no problem sharing it.
Thank you,
So there's another way of looking at this philosophy. And so how do I use, where the toolbox, you know, what must I do? Where are the 5 things? So one of Frankl's sort of, not compatriots, but also an author, a scholar on logotherapy. It was a little bit younger, Joseph Fabry, sort of developed what is called the 5. I think there's 5 signposts to meaning. So guideposts in a way. So if we in a coaching conversation or in a self-therapy conversation, how do I get myself to a better spot? So the first one that needs to be considered is self-discovery. So not who we are now, you know, behind all the masks. You know, we're from early day on, we all know, you know, you get conditioned, you need to toe the line, you're told what to believe and how to behave. But you know, some of it is very good and very useful, but maybe some of it is not. But so in the self-discovery is, this is the process of figuring out and coming to grips with who am I behind all these marks? Who am I really? And connecting with this wisdom of the heart. Now, we spoke very briefly about this wisdom of the heart, this self-understanding. It is a basic self-understanding that we have, and we all have it, but it gets confused. and it gets lost in emotions and in star signs, and I'm born a Virgo or a Cancer or whatever it is, and I'm like that because I'm a Virgo, you know, and we fall in that trap that we think we are our thoughts and we are our emotions, and that we are just our body, and we do not connect and appreciate this deeper self that we have behind us. That's sort of one area. Sam, you must interrupt me. I'm just going to run through them, and you must just when you unmute yourself, I know you want to say something.
No. I'm just thinking that we probably got like 10 minutes left. So
okay.
Before we open it to questions,
all right.
Go for it.
So a personal uniqueness is thinking of you in this space and time and moment. What is it? Because we all absolutely unique. Nobody walks in your shoes. Nobody is stuck with your challenges and your life, but you, in this uniqueness, somewhere in there is the place where as a self-coach or as a therapist, you can go and unlock something so that the person can get that aha moment, or that realization of, this is me, this is what I need to do, this is what is called from me. So behind all of this, I spoke earlier very briefly, I made a comment about the demand quality of life. Frankl will say life is a taskmaster. Behind this, there's this calling, because think of it this way. We all want things from life. I want this, I want more of this, less of that, more of this, here too long, there too short. I want. We all live like that, all of it. Even if it's just, I want my opinions and my proposal to be accepted. Why can't I see my point? You know, even if it's just that. But at some point in life, we need to turn that table like a chessboard and say, what is life expecting from me? That is the question that sometimes, and that is the question that can help us connect with this obligation. I mean, obligation is not a bad word. We are always obligated. You know, we never free from, never, nobody's free from, make the list. You know, problems, anxiety, issues, never free from not enough this, too much of this, but we are always free to express ourselves in a way, do something. So he would talk about this now. I'm putting a foot in mindfulness. Between what happens and what we do, there's a space. I mean, that space was 3 seconds long. Even if it's 3 seconds long, but we're so rushed, we quickly want to give the answer, we quickly want to deal with something, we're so rushed in so many ways that we do not slow down and connect. And I'm still on this, you know, okay, on the personal uniqueness one. Scope of choices. So options. We all have a scope of choices, and as a therapist, part of the process is unpacking the scope of choices and discussing them. And I'm sure, you know, in all your coaching modalities, you will find similar things. Responsibility. Now, Frankl is he's got a thing where he talks about the tragic triad: pain, guilt, and death. And what we can learn from pain, guilt, and death. And we can't go into the detail now, but with responsibility, we are responsible to do in every moment what is needed to do. But he would say that if you do what is right, there is no reason to feel guilty. So guilt will not exist if the opportunity for a decision was there and you made the right decision. And if you don't make the right decision, I mean, you're gonna feel guilty. But then, you know, as the Eastern people will say, then you learn from it. Then you learn, and next time you try and be better. So the responsibility is a signpost to meaning, because we are responsible. We are obligated as people, as we are called to duty. And we need to act responsibly. And in that process, we will unlock meaning moment by moment. And as Sam said earlier, not Mother Teresa moments. Meaning is not at the top of the mountain. It's not Mother Teresa. It's going out of this meeting and say sorry to somebody, going out of this meeting, make a cup of tea for somebody, go out of this meeting and, you know, play with a cat and be nice. it's the finer graineries of life that he would say. The final one, and transcendency is we will do a whole module on transcendency. So transcendency is get over yourself and reach out for something worthy other than yourself. It is not treating yourself as a doormat, but meaning is a connection with something or someone greater than yourself, a loved one, a cause, the SPCA, the office, my colleagues, my team, my family, whatever it is. But in the transcendency, life's an echo. I mean, he would use the, and you know, it needs something to engage with. He would use an analogy of a boomerang, and he would say that it's like a boomerang. It's going to come back to you if it doesn't hit its mark. It needs to hit. You know, you need meaning is beyond yourself. It lies with somebody else. He often quotes an Eastern mystic, a Jewish mystic called Hillel, who 2,000 years old, who knows. He summed up a big deal of Frankl's philosophy with 3 statements. He said, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? If I don't do it now, when am I going to do it? And if I do it for myself, then who am I? And that, you know, we can, some other time we can unpack that, but that's a sort of that shows you the essence of this thinking of Frankl. Sam, I'm going to step on just another comment here before we go on.
No, all good.
All right. So let's now get into the toolbox. So there are 4 key tools that logotherapy would use. The Socratic Dialogue, you've probably heard this. You use it. It's not unique to logotherapy, but the method of inquiry. So the Socratic Dialogue is a tool, but where you apply this tool is to sniff out meaning, is to ask your questions and to explore and do your investigation with the client and your partnering conversation directed at meaning. And Sam, earlier you used logo hints. So logo is the Greek word for meaning in this context, is listening for those hints and exploring those avenues with the client. Attitude modulation. There's another author which you can go and Google, Elizabeth Lucas. She's still alive. So Elizabeth Lucas, I think she still practices. Attitude modulation, there's a particular way of modifying attitudes. And the quick glimpse is to look for what has remained despite the challenge. So what has remained despite COVID? What has remained despite me losing my job? Secondly, looking at what have I gained with this? What have I gained with COVID? What have I gained with losing my job? The third one is a bigger context, and you know this. I mean, you've used bigger context and seeing the bigger context within this, and with, I mean, meaning and purpose sits underneath this. So the tools are not necessarily unique, but the way that it's applied is typically of your logotherapy. So perspective, the third one. The fourth one would be, now listen to this. An attitude in itself can be empowering. So earlier, when Sam was talking, to be an exemplary sufferer, struggler, to carry my misfortune with pride as an example. So shouldering my stuff in a defiant attitude is in itself, it is possible to it in itself to make you feel I'm doing my thing. It's not nice, it's terrible, but I'm doing my thing. This is me. This is how I do this. And then soldiering forward. Self-distancing. So back to the conversation we had about dimensional ontology, body, mind, and spirit, we are able to create a distance between what happens and who we are, and observe. So when we create distance, we self-distance. We I mean, Kierkegaard, I mean, they and many others. That's our nemesis. The fact that we know that we know that we know. We are aware of our stuff, and that's what's making it so hard. Is I know that I know, and I'm getting stuck here. But to create that distance and observe myself, now I can de-reflect. And in Frankl's in his language, de-reflect from hyper-intention and hyper hyper-intention and hyper. Sam, what's the other one? What's the? I'm getting lost in my own words here. Where we can get out of this intensive, obsessive grasping of something. So self-distancing is that tool to use so that me as a person or as a client, I can look at myself and see it from a distance. But as logical intention is humor. It's like turning stage fright onto itself. It's turning people who's got some kind of obsessive compulsive issue on itself with the use of humor. But I'm not going to go into that at the moment. That was like really chucking everything at the board to show you the model. So you want to see it.
I would say that classing those logo tools, you need to be skilled to be able to use them.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of people who study the logotherapy tools are registered counselors, registered psychotherapists. So you can use components of it as coaching, but some of the stuff is you need to know what you're doing.
Okay. So just a final thought. I think it is a final thought on mindfulness. So because both Sam and I resonate with this and all my India work, we combine mindfulness with the work that we do, and Frankl himself applied it. So visualization. If you read Man's Search for Meaning, you will read there how he would work in a camp with snow and ice and hunger and whatever, breaking stones, whatever they were doing, thinking of himself, seeing himself giving a lecture on a stage. So mindfulness here is not it. I mean, we do breathing and the classical 101 mindfulness practices, but mindfulness through the lens of logotherapy is making us aware of our spiritual reality. So it's it can use things like visualization. It can use an awareness between stimulus and response, to be aware of what is called from me, what has been asked from me. So I just want to put that. So I am not my thoughts, I have them. I mean, you've all heard this before, and he would remind us that we are able to transcend whatever psychological issues we have by taking a distance, by self-distancing. The transitoriness of life, I referred to it earlier, but just to repeat that, the hourglass, the future, we live, if we do a self-experiment on where most of my thoughts are, most of your thoughts are they lying in tomorrow, which is the space of anxiety? Or do they lie in yesterday, which is a space of regret? Or do they lie here, now, presently? And we are past and path dependent. We need to look forward. We need to look back. We cannot, sorry, my screen is blurring. I've got a power outage and the sun is setting. So I can see my screen is misting up. It's not having a disregard for future or past, but it's seeing the context and seeing that if I want to make a life of meaning, I need to make sure that when those potential future moments fall through my current moment here, now, in this moment, now, not tomorrow, only now can I actually deal with it so that I can look back at something that's befitting my, my sort of legacy that I'm creating for myself.
Classy, I think a lot of what we do with our clients is to get them to calm down, to breathe, to be aware of their bodies, to be aware of the moment, because, you know, meaning has to be found in the moment. And if you're running 1,000,000 miles an hour, you're going to miss the meaning of the moment. You're not even going to be aware that a choice was available. You're not even going to be aware that you could have adopted a heroic attitude towards something. And I would say that the biggest changes have come with people who've embraced mindfulness, and we get them to do a whole lot of exercises on a regular basis to build up that habit. And that's the way in which mindfulness and meaning come together.
So a final comment from me. There's another sort of module we do, which is called the principles of optimal living, which we're not going to go into now. But what we haven't touched on is uncertainty. And part of optimal living is to be able to navigate with uncertainty. We have to embrace it, because life is ambiguous. It's gray. It's murky. We don't know what's happening. It's confusing. We have to embrace it. We cannot hope to have absolute certainty. It's not actually realistic. I mean, obviously there are some things that we can be certain about, but there's so many things that we absolutely have got no clue about, but we need to navigate despite that. So I just want to, you know, it's not, because it's, I mean, I'm sitting here listening to myself, and it sounds like we've given this beautiful blueprint and you just need to go and tick some boxes, but it's, as we know, life is not that simple. Chris, so
yeah, thank you, Classy. Thank you, Sam. That was fantastic. I've got a lot of notes and I do have some questions. I'm wondering if we should just take a 7-minute break until 15:15, just to give people time for a body break or to grab a glass of water or make a cup of tea or something, and then come back. Can we do that? Is that a thumbs up? Can we do that?
Okay. All right.
So I'm going to stay online, and I would just suggest stay online. I might switch my camera off. I'll come back at 15:15, and let's just grab literally a 6-7 minute break, and then come back and take some questions. Thanks.
All right, 100%.
Cool.
Great, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. That ultimate meaning is something that's beyond our conception. It's something which we will never understand. It is the space of belief. Despite it is believing something despite it is belief in the divine. So it is very, 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 very important. But it's not as if we can. I'm about to. So the answer is no.
Okay.
The answer is we can find it only actually in the moment. It may be linked to ultimate meaning. Like if I'm very religious, I may be doing it because God asked me to do it. I'm just making this up. So because one day when I stand in front of God, you know, He will be proud of me. It may be, but I can only do it now. I mean, I can only express it now. So the crux of it is that meaning is only ever to be discovered in the moment, but it can be linked to a sense of ultimately I'm God's servant. I'm using religion now because that is, you know, that is typically the space of ultimate meaning. But I can only figure it out now in this moment, sitting here now.
Can I chip in here? So what really guides us to find meaning in the moment is our conscience. So our conscience is something which is the tool with which we discover meaning. So if you're a non-religious person, you can say your conscience, it comes from your mind, it's a culmination of your experience, attitudes, beliefs, etc. If you're a religious person, you would say that your conscience is the voice of God speaking through you. But Frankl himself was a deeply devout and religious man. So he would say that ultimate meaning is the ultimate. but his philosophy is, as Classy said, it is secular.
Mm. Yeah, spiritually is what makes us human. That struck for me. I think you said that, Sam. So I suppose there's a big link between the two, between the two pieces. I mean, I'm interested in how you use this in a coaching context in the corporates that you work with. So, and how people respond to it. I mean, that is interesting for me. But I don't want to ask all the questions. Is that a helpful question to unpack? Maybe. Yeah, I'm getting some nods.
Ask that question again.
So I'm interested in the application and how you use it, because I know you use it in group coaching situations and the work that you do in corporate spaces, particularly with Toyota. So two questions is I suppose it's a big question to say, how do you use it? But I suppose what I really want to ask is, how do you find that people respond to it?
Okay, let me talk to it. So in a group session, so in the way we do it, in our group sessions, we recognize ultimate meaning, but we recognize that it is also personal. So spirituality is not a collective exercise. It is a personal exercise. So ultimate meaning, I would be very nervous to have long, deep conversations about ultimate meaning in a mixed group, because now we're going to stack up the voice of my God against the voice of your God. So this is but let me continue to talk to it. So in a one-on-one conversation, understanding that I can only respond to life's demands in this moment. I cannot respond tomorrow. So meaning is not something that I can pack away and I can store it in the past, yes, but I can deal with it and work with it only in this moment. So in this moment, somebody is confronted with a decision. Am I going to expose something at the office? Am I going to resign for some reason? Am I going to make this decision in my workplace now? Here's the challenge. I'm now confronted. I've got a problem. What do I do? Calling on that individual's sense of ultimate meaning is by way of, if I'm now going to really have to make it up to try and answer you, but what will be in the final reckoning? How will this decision look in the final instance? When in the final day of answering for your life, how will this decision affect that? That is a question. It's not, I can't give that answer. No, that person must now figure it out and take a stance and deal with, how do they reconcile all this stuff going on, stack up against their personal belief on the ultimate meaning of their life. But the thing here is that meaning is sometimes, it's a verb. It's an action. It's something you do. It's something you've got to experience. It's not an intellectual thing. So the ultimate meaning is really important, but it's very personal.
There's a big drive to bring spirituality back into the workplace. So for decades and decades, it's been, something that is very, very separate from the workplace. And most of our clients are religious in some way. And for them, almost to legitimize them, bringing their spirituality and their beliefs into their whole being is a more authentic way of living for them. So some of them are absolutely delighted that they're almost like free to bring in their beliefs in to assist them to find meaning and to bring more of it into the workplace, obviously without alienating other people.
Chris, I can add this. So meaning sometimes is described as whatever is significant for you, makes your life coherent, makes it hang together, makes it make sense. And purpose is the actions, the goals that you pack around that help you walk a life that is meaningful. The ultimate meaning is I'm repeating myself now, sorry for that, but the ultimate meaning is obviously that reference point. It's like, ultimately, how do I answer for my life? Because now if you consider that question, that puts you in that space where you say, okay, how am I going to answer for my life? What did I make of it?
Yeah.
What decision did I take? But not, what did I make of it in the sense, maybe what did I make of it? But more importantly, now I've got this decision. Must I divorce this person or not? How do I look at this? Must I resign or not? Must I take this job or not? Must I fire this person or not? Or, whatever the business decision is that somebody is confronted with.
So I saw Jen had a question. Jen, did you have your hand up and have a question?
I guess it was a reflection, really, because I think often when, particularly like senior execs, but I think anyone, when they are taking on a new big role or they're making quite significant transitions into or outside of organizations, a lot of this, I think, comes into coaching from a kind of, what's my personal vision? What's the legacy I want to leave if I'm going into a new leadership role? And also when people are changing careers, so moving into a retirement or moving out of an organization and looking at what's their next phase, there's often more opportunity, I think, to think about, well, really, what is my purpose? What is it that has given me meaning? So yeah, it was just a reflection there.
Very cool. You remind me. Frankl would, there's so many things we haven't unpacked. So for instance, listen to this. The pandeterminism, fate and freedom, the challenge between fate and freedom. So fate meaning I'm dealt this deck of cards. Yes, maybe there's something I can do and I've got now a decision to make. So am I going to capitulate and conform? Or am I going to express my spiritual freedom by saying, no, this is not good enough. This is not going to work. Not from a selfish, egotistical point, because the ego is the illusionary, that's that sense of self that we need it. We need that concept. But we're not, so when we talk about voices of the heart and voice of the mind, those two conflict. Elizabeth Lucas refers to this as no psychic antagonism, the spiritual psychic antagonism, this tension that sits there. And freedom is so scary for some people that they will rather conform. They will rather just toe the line. They will rather just do whatever other people think is the right thing to do, because expressing their freedom is just simply too scary. He's got this thing of the isms, the collectivism, pandeterminism, thinking it's all been decided. It hasn't been all decided. Maybe on an ultimate sense, maybe maybe there we can think, but tomorrow, what happens tomorrow has not been decided. Definitely not.
I'm going to pick on a few people and ask a few questions. Andrew, I'm interested from a mindfulness point of view. Andrew's a mindfulness coach. I'm interested in your perspectives on whether, how this links for you from a mindfulness point of view. Carol, I might want to pick on you and ask you in terms of your coaching with end-of-life clients at end of life and how they have found meaning and so on. So I'm really, if you're open to sharing, I'm picking on you, but you don't have to respond. I'm just interested. Krainer, I'm interested in your perspective from a coaching point of view, how this maybe overlaps in terms of coaching and so on. Anybody, I'm just I want to make it real for the group, how we might make it real for ourselves, Any thoughts?
I'm happy to share. I'm coming in off the back of having done a team coaching session with having explored what for the team, quite a new team, although interesting, quite old tenure and new people joining, and sharing what for them was a team purpose, their why. And I'm wondering, in the context of this work, where there is the individual purpose and the bigger purpose, which is a life purpose, and it feels like my brain's a bit like porridge. I've got to just own up because I've been coaching all day, but it feels like a very linear question, but the concept of the team purpose or the systemic purpose, how is that understood or worked with in an organizational team setup from a logotherapy perspective and finding meaning and finding purpose?
So I don't know if I'm going to answer you, but let me just say something. A conflict of values is real. So somewhere along the line, I'm going to have that conflict. And it's not only a bad thing. I can have a conflict of value. Must I prepare for my meeting tomorrow, or must I go and fetch my kids? They're both important. You know, one is not better than the other. But in a work environment, if there's a purpose being cobbled together for a team and whatever, you know, that space of we all going to go together like that, and an individual doesn't feel part of it, that is not something you can wish to be right. That is that person. But the thing here is now, and it's individual. If the individuals, and I'm now not talking on your backhand, but if individuals' issues and attitudinal problems and comments are not dealt with, they will nod their head. We will not know that they buy in or not. So I don't know if I'm answering you, but there is a potential conflict, and that is something to be addressed and something to be talked through and worked through.
It's hard to find joint meaning, really, as a team. And I think very often those exercises are quite superficial. You kind of agree, the whole conformity thing comes in. And I think very seldom are people properly authentic with those things, because they are being who they think that they need to be in the organization. So we do those sorts of exercises, but it's very hard to make it a meaningful purpose that you come up with as a team, unless there's a lot of psychological safety in the group, and people have got a lot in common, and they feel that they can speak their truth.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with what you've said, Sam. Absolutely. It's a tricky piece of work to make it real. Yeah. It's a very tricky piece of work to make it real. Thank you.
Look, go for it. Sorry.
Go, Andrew.
Sure. Okay. Sorry. So as Chris said, I work quite a lot with mindfulness, and I was just sort of appreciating the dovetail, and at times not even really being able to tell the difference between the logotherapeutic approach and mindfulness and where you were combining them. And I didn't really want to speak too much to that. I was quite curious around how logotherapy and burnout work together, and if you encounter that in your work, and how you apply your logotherapy to that.
Actually, we do encounter it, and we actually work with it, and the difference between fatigue and just what is burnout and fatigue, and when is it mental and when is it spiritual, and when do we just need to sleep and when do we actually have to take action in order to deal with that burnout. So let me start by saying this. When Frankl traveled to America in the early 50s, after the war, or late 40s, this was all new to them, because this kind of work is in the West. 100, 120 years old. You know, it's very new for Western society, this way of thinking. So they thought it was the greatest thing they've ever heard. When he traveled to the to the east, they said to him, we've heard this before. So, and answering your questions directly, I don't have a quick answer for you, but fatigue is a symptom of being treated like a machine. Either yourself or the company made you, or whoever, but you ended up running and working and stressing and mindlessly shoveling coal, and one day it just breaks down because we are very good at coping, and we can cope tremendously, but we break at some point, and that burnout, whether it's quick or slow or whatever. So it is a classic, not a classic. It sits right in logotherapy, like that somebody has worked away to such an extent that they break. But now it's all good. What do we do now? How do we deal with this? And that is where the therapy comes in. And in terms of mindfulness, it will be to slow down, to feel different about, see the self and the I, and who am I really, and what does this picture look like? And it's a whole, I mean, this is, I can't really give you I can't give you a simple answer apart from agreeing with you that it happens, and it's the diagnosis is maybe the easy part. The treatment is the tricky part. That is the work, but I mean, the thing about resiliency is, if we know why we do what we do, we will remain resilient. I mean, I'm generalizing grossly here, but resiliency is a function of deeply understanding what have I signed up for and what am I doing here. And if there's a disconnect, if I'm doing this just for the sake of pleasure or power, it's not, I'm not going to remain strong. I'm not going to be able to carry that load. But if it's linked to a spiritual reality, then you will carry it. I mean, and it's easy for me to sit here and talk because I wasn't in a concentration camp, but there he was. He survived the camps. And he's telling us, what are the signs, what are the levers to pull, and it's sorry, Andrew, I hope I'm making sense.
Classy, the interesting thing that we have found in Toyota is how many people have made major life decisions after learning mindfulness and meaning, where they've left their jobs, they have left the company. It's quite scary in a way that when people stop for 1 minute just to go deep inside and to ask themselves, why am I experiencing this existential vacuum? Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? Then very often the route forward is quite obvious in one-on-one coaching.
Yeah, thank you, Klaus. Yeah, I think that that aspect around sort of a spiritual connection, or as you've been talking about as meaning, pairing well with resilience is really useful. Purpose, yeah. Thanks.
So maybe burnout is a symptom of disconnection from meaning, is what you say.
Yeah.
Thanks. Carol?
I don't really have a question. I just really want to thank Classy and Sam for unpacking this. It's quite a lot of work, body of work but you have done it so beautifully and simply. So as Chris said, I work with end of life and a grief counselor, and I see, that what really struck me was that idea in the concentration camps of those that gave up hope and lay down and died. That is still a choice. And then the thing about the responsibility, what is my responsibility? Because I don't know what their meaning was about.
Yeah.
So I see that a lot of times with people, you know, that are able to look back on their lives and say, integrity, I made some mistakes, but all in all, I achieved those goals, and therefore my life had meaning, and then I can let it all go. And those that are still fighting they're actually burning out. In the way you just described it, is that they didn't have any meaning. And without a doubt, the ones that are religious generally are very accepting of us now, except for sometimes they have a spiritual crisis. But then you can always guide them back to what gave them meaning, you know, and the promises that were made in the church that you will go to heaven. So I'm an existentialist counselor, so I do apply a lot of this. So it was just really beautiful. Thank you. I don't really have any questions.
Yeah. Well, Carol, you know, I mean, thank you for sharing that. And it's such a, I mean, I don't know you and I don't know what you do, but what you said, the words, it's sacred, the kind of conversations that you have with somebody. And I just want to soften, maybe I'm going to try and soften this call to responsibility. Let me soften it this way. To sit with someone and page through a photo album and recount and recall stories, beautiful stories from the past, is meaningful and is worthy of that person's time. And if it's called for, that is what one do, is to say, tell me about that. And then let them unpack it. And they will, in their telling of the story and in them going, so the past is not only to be looked at, it's to be engaged with, because there is reminders of what was meaningful, and it can be called back into the presence. And I mean, my brother, part of the reasons why it's not the only reason, but when my brother passed away from cancer, he was about 63. I was still making ads for Vodacom and Toyota at the time. I was at his bed like the day before, and he said to me in Afrikaans, my life had no meaning. But he said, my lewe het geen sin gehad nie. So that can be translated, it doesn't make sense, it made no sense, or it had no meaning, whatever. But there was this guy dying, feeling, what the hell? What was it all about? And that's, I mean, to have conversations with people that are there, I mean, that is so real. Hey? I mean, that is so, wow.
It's what gives me meaning.
Wow.
And that meaningful moments make up a meaningful life. I actually, Sam, I used that in a talk the other day. I said, you know, you can have these moments of connection. I also work with people with dementia. And that's that little, those moments are the things that are created a meaningful moment for them, and whatever the way they experience it. Is it just a spiritual connection? Do they know how I am? It doesn't matter, it's present. And then, so
now,
so
sorry, I'm not jumping in here, and I'm out of my, I'm going to now go onto very slippery slope here, or not slippery slope, but on thin ice here, because I'm going to say about a person who's dementia, or somebody, an old person sitting in a wheelchair, seemingly their life is over. They seemingly useless. But again, to that quote on the dignity of a human being, the fact that they are not useful doesn't make their life meaningless. They may be useless, they can't make tea, can't wash themselves, they may be useless in many ways, but it is not meaningless, because for the kids, for families, for somebody else next to them, they play a role. They are a role model, so they are immensely meaningful, even though they are functionally maybe useless. So
just one more thing about
No, I'm going to go to Dawn in a second. Just finish, Carol. No problem. I see Dawn's going to.
I just want to add to that is that, so the other was it Heidegger who spoke about the now of course I forgot Dasein. The you can't separate it's a unified thing, the body mind.
Yes.
And when people get sick with dementia, they're separated and go, oh, they are not there anymore. Shame, they used to be like, and that's the kind of, I'm trying to bring people out of that attitude, and this is also what Frankl talked about, body, mind, spirit. So it all just dovetails. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks for sharing, and yeah, massive respect for the work that you do. Dawn, what time is it in Canada?
Let's see, right now it is 1:44 p.m.
Oh, lunchtime.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a question, sticking on the realm of slippery slopes, and I guess maybe for Sam, because I believe you're working with Toyota, and the type of this logotherapy work is very deep meaning and powerful. And I think about an organization and coaching within an organization, and the very fine and careful line that coaches need to walk between working with employees, who may be not having a meaningful time in their life or in their work, versus answering to the organization, who are very much probably about, results and profit and ROI. And how do you navigate maybe that with this type of work?
Well, most of the work that I do is with Cecil. So I'm employed by Cecil. I do Toyota work with Classy, but I face exactly the same challenge because I'm in change management and I work on culture as well. And I often find that it's almost impossible to work with meaning on an organization-wide level. I prefer to work with the individual. And when you work with the individual, you know what, when we say change management, for example, you want to make a huge change in an organization, it's really completely superficial. And for many years, I was completely disillusioned because I could see so few fruits of my labors out there in this massive corporation of 32,000 people. So to keep myself sane, I do one-on-one coaching, and that's where I find the person can be authentic, and it doesn't really matter that Cecil's intention for me to have a coaching conversation with someone is to get them to be more productive. It doesn't matter, because what I do when we discuss meaning and we discuss mindfulness is they find their own authentic self. They find a fuller expression of who they are at work. And as a byproduct, productivity improves, or as a byproduct, they move into a job which has got a better fit for them. Or they leave the organization, which is often a win-win for the person and for the organization because it was a bad fit. So I hold the organization's motives very, very lightly. And I hold with great care and respect that individual's meaning that they need to find in life. So I'm never a mouthpiece for the organization, even though I'm paid by them.
Interesting. That's great. And do you ever kind of have that kind of expectation setting conversation with the leads or heads and saying like let's be realistic about what's going on here, kind of thing? Or
when you say the leads, when you're talking about
the principles of the organization that's brought you in, and
yeah. You know what, they can never tell you what methodology you must use or what you need to get the results you get to. So the actual conversation is with that individual, and the contract setting and the confidentiality. And I would never agree to sharing anything from a coaching session with the organization. So yeah, so their expectations, sometimes they are not met. in the organization because they're not possible.
Of course. Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
No. Sorry, Dawn.
No, my last question is just about if someone wanted to learn more or study, how could one go about doing that? And that can be at the end, but I just want to get that in because I am very curious about learning.
Let me answer that now. There are various logotherapy institutes all over the world. So in Canada, I wouldn't know what the position is like in Canada, but there's one in the US, there's obviously one in Germany, there's one in Vienna, there's Luxembourg, there's one in South Africa. So logotherapy is offered as an online course through various Luxembourg, I think, has got a very robust degree or diploma. Jerusalem, obviously, because Frankl was Jewish. But I can maybe on an email that I send out, I can refer to that. Just to comment on your question for Sam, we unashamedly do not talk about corporate stuff at all. So corporate business strategy, it's not in the room, it's not in the agenda, and we say it right out when we do his workshops and energy. So I can't talk about work because I don't know what it is. We're not interested. It's not our mandate. It's nothing to do with corporate stuff. It's got everything to do with you and how you pitch up and how you do what you do. So in selling this to a corporate, it's quite hard, but dealing with attitudes, dealing with making somebody resilient has actually got nothing to do with the corporate strategy. It's got everything to do with how that person look at it and how they engage with it and how they not play with those ideas, but how they engage with those ideas. So we understand, but the results are people pitching up a little bit calmer, be able to shut up when they need to shut up, not fly off the handle, be able to remain positive despite stuff that happens. With COVID, supply of vehicles, strikes, factory issues, it's such a stressful environment. And for them to, I said in the beginning, I used the word psychic balance, for them to keep their mental balance, to stay on course, it's a personal thing, and that's what we address. So we actually don't talk about, we can't speak about the work, the strategy. That's got nothing to do with us.
They end up being more compassionate leaders, and they end up having more effective teams because they listen more. And also what we do in Toyota is we make them do a creative project. And that creative project is very often themselves as a work of art, themselves as an optimized self, improved communication skills, better understanding of their people. And that in turn leads to unintended consequences of greater productivity, but that's not something we aim for.
Yeah, I just think it's so, sorry to interrupt, Lassie, but I just think it's so amazing that there are organizations that are evolved enough to understand that we hire the whole person. We don't just hire the person who pitches up for 6-8 hours or whatever, 9 hours of work. And Dawn, I sort of do both. I mean, I coach, but I also hire coaches inside the business. So, and I'm happy to set broad objectives, but then it's up to the people to deal with whatever topics they want to deal with, because if they deal with the personal stuff, they're going to be better at work. I mean, it's valid, but the fact that, Lassie, that you could do group work like that and the business is completely comfortable to allow you that space to do that, I think that's it's really great that there are organizations, understanding that. It's really, really cool. Andrew, you got a question. We're going to close at 8, guys. We've got time for 1 or 2 more. Go for it, Andrew.
Yeah, just to follow on what you were saying, Chris, and to ask Classy and Sam, did the organizations that you work with, Sasol and Toyota, did they approach you with a mandate to come in and work in a mindful way with their staff, or did you pitch to them?
So in the case of Toyota, no. So let me no, but we managed to interest them in it, because it was almost we almost sorry, Andrew, I'm stumbling here. I'll find my way now. So corporate is about reaching millions. It's about making a mass difference immediately all over the world. That's corporate thinking. And we went in with a micro approach to say, and I mean, we need stats. So the classic stat is that 96% of all companies in the last 10 years have made some form of restructuring. 75% of that fail because individual attitudes were not dealt with. And that's sort of how we get into a conversation. But what we end up selling is a small project. It's going to reach, we work with 12 people at a time. And then we do 12 people at a time. And it takes 6 months to do this. So it's not a massive thing. So, in a way, it's a small risk. It's not everybody. It's not the whole organization. If it doesn't work, it's not such a big deal. It's 12 people, So that's how we started this thing, really, really small and slowly. And then the results is feeding it because now, they're lining up more programs. We're doing more of it. So it's now becoming a far more integrated program because the results were there, because it is a really tough thing to sell. I mean, in a corporate environment, it's really hard to. So no, we'll call you back.
So how I sold Logotherapy and Sassel was calling it resilience. So I ended up, and this was during the pandemic, I ended up training around 600 people and training up train the trainer about another 6 people. And it was basically logotherapy and mindfulness in disguise called resilience. And yeah, that's what you do. You don't go out there and call it logotherapy and mindfulness.
Yeah.
Skillful, Sam. Skillful.
Very, very.
Very clever rephrase, Sam.
Also,
Exactly. Yeah.
Resilience, focus, what corporates want to hear, and then the ramifications spread out from that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I mean, just my very last thought was around the impact COVID has had on all of this stuff as well. Culturally, the Great Resignation. The latest thing is called quiet quitting, which is also reevaluating what I do. I heard something at a conference the other day about acting your wage. Act your wage.
Wow.
So, and all of this is a reevaluation of values and I guess also all about meaning, right? So, what the final outcome or the impact of COVID, we won't know, I think, for many, many years. Not obviously the physical effects, but also the psychological effects and so on, and how we're making meaning of that now. It's interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I think we'll close it there to say thanks so much, Flossie. Thank you, Sam. Thanks for everybody joining. I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot, and I have recorded it. So if anybody wants a recording, I know there were some folks who missed it, so I'm just going to send the recording out, and then maybe Flossie, it would be great if you can share the slides. We'll send them out to people, and
yes, do that.
Also details if anybody wants to study further or needs more info and references and things like that. But thanks to you all. It's been fun. It's been a nice night.
Right.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Right. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.